In the village of Umuzi, there lived a young man named Mark. Mark was the only son of a wealthy businessman who owned vast lands and livestock. His father's name was Mr. Ade, a respected elder in the community. Mark grew up in luxury with every desire met and every need fulfilled. He wore the finest clothes, attended the best schools, and had a bright future ahead of him. Mr. Ade was a kind and generous man, but one fateful day, dark clouds gathered over Umuzi. Mr. Ade received news that would change their lives forever. He had been scammed by traders who promised great profits, but instead took all his money. The loss was devastating. Mr. Ade could not bear the shame and the thought of failing his family and community. In his despair, Mr. Ade took his own life, leaving Mark alone and heartbroken. All the wealth and security vanished. The lands were sold, the livestock were taken, and the beautiful house Mark had called home was lost. Mark found himself on the streets with no money and no family to turn to. The once cheerful and carefree boy now wandered the village, searching for food and shelter. The vibrant colors of his past life faded to the harsh reality of his new existence. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Mark struggled to survive, relying on the kindness of strangers and odd jobs to get by. Some helped him out of pity, while others ignored him. Mark's clothes became tattered, and his once bright eyes grew dull with hunger and despair. One evening, Mark sat by the village well, too tired and hungry to move. His thoughts wandering to his father, wishing he were still alive. Tears welled up in his eyes. Just then, his soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Are you okay?" Mark looked up to see a beautiful young woman standing before him. She had a kind face and gentle eyes that seemed to see right into his soul. "My name is Jane," she said, extending her hand. "You look like you could use some help." Mark hesitated, unsure if he could trust her, but something about Jane's sincerity reassured him. He took her hands and allowed her to help him up. Jane led Mark to her mother's home, where she offered him a meal and a place to rest. As they sat together, Mark shared his story, and Jane listened with compassion and understanding. She didn't offer to help because she wanted anything in return. She did it out of the goodness of her heart. From that day, Jane became Mark's guardian angel. She found him small jobs and encouraged him to stay strong. Slowly, with her support, Mark began to rebuild his life, one step at a time. As weeks turned into months, Mark and Jane grew closer. Their bond strengthened as they spent more time together, sharing their dreams and fears. Jane's kindness and generosity were a beacon of hope in Mark's dark world, and he found himself looking forward to their time together. Jane was not wealthy, but she had a rich spirit. She worked hard, selling handmade crafts and running errands for the villagers. Their friendship soon blossomed into something deeper. Mark found himself falling in love with Jane, admiring her beauty, strength and kindness. One evening, as they walked along the riverbank, Mark gathered the courage to express his feelings. "Jane," he began, his heart pounding, "you have been my light in the darkest times. I have fallen in love with you. Will you be my girlfriend?" Jane looked at him, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "Yes, Mark," she replied softly. "I will be your girlfriend." Now, with Jane by his side, Mark felt invincible. Together, they faced their life challenges, supporting each other through thick and thin. Their love grew stronger, and they dreamed of a bright future together. One day, an exciting opportunity presented itself. A distant relative of Mark's father reached out with news of a business venture in a faraway land. There was a chance to make a significant amount of money, enough to change Mark's fortunes forever. Mark was thrilled, but also hesitant. He didn't want to leave Jane behind, but he knew this was a chance he couldn't pass up. He discussed it with Jane, who understood the importance of the opportunity. "Mark," Jane said, holding his hands, "this is your chance to rebuild your life. I believe in you, and I will always support you. Go and make us proud. Mark was deeply moved by Jane's selflessness. He promised her that he would return and marry her as soon as he had made enough money. Jane, though sad to see him go, trusted his promise. With Jane's savings, Mark prepared for his journey. The day he left, he hugged Jane tightly, whispering words of love and assurance. Wait for me, Jane. I will come back for you. Jane watched as Mark boarded the bus, tears streaming down her face. She wept until he was out of her sight, her heart filled with both hope and sorrow. As Mark traveled to the distant land, he faced many challenges. The journey was long and arduous, but he kept Jane's image in his mind, drawing strength from their love. He worked hard. Slowly but surely, he began to make a name for himself. Back in Umuzi, Jane waited patiently for Mark's return. Days turned into weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. Communication was difficult, and Jane often wondered how Mark was doing. Despite the uncertainty, she remained faithful, turning down several suitors who came for her. Jane's life was not easy. She continued to work hard, managing her small business, but deep inside, Jane's heart was heavy with loneliness and the fear that Mark might never return. Now, 5 years had passed since Mark's departure, when Jane faced a serious problem at her workplace. A wealthy customer had purchased a valuable item, only to discover it was a fake. The customer was furious and threatened to take legal action. Jane was devastated, knowing she had done nothing wrong. On that fateful day, a rich and influential man named Williams visited her office. He saw the commotion and moved by Jane's plight and decided to help. Williams investigated the matter and discovered that the problem lay with the suppliers, not Jane. So he used his influence to resolve the issue and clear Jane's name. Grateful for his assistance, Jane thanked Williams, who in turn was impressed by her strength and integrity. They began to spend more time together, and a close friendship developed. Williams admired Jane's resilience and kindness, while Jane appreciated Williams' generosity and support. Williams helped Jane expand her business, providing her with resources and advice. Their bond grew stronger, and soon Williams found himself falling in love with Jane. He admired her loyalty to Mark, but couldn't help his feelings. However, he struggled to express his feelings, knowing that Jane's heart still belonged to Mark. But then, his love for her only grew stronger, and he could no longer keep his feelings hidden. One evening, as they sat together, Williams finally summoned the courage to speak. "Jane," he began, his voice trembling with emotion. "There's something I need to tell you. I have fallen in love with you. I know your heart belongs to Mark, but I can't hide my feelings any longer." Jane was taken aback by William's confession. She cared deeply for him and valued their friendship, but her heart was still with Mark. She couldn't ignore the love and care Williams had shown her. He had been there for her during her darkest times, and his kindness had been a source of great support and comfort. "Williams," Jane said softly, her eyes filling with tears, "you have been such a wonderful friend to me. Your love and care mean the world to me. I still have feelings for Mark, but I can't ignore everything you've done for me. I will be your girlfriend." Williams was overjoyed by Jane's acceptance. They began to date, and their love for each other grew stronger with each passing day. They spent countless hours together, sharing their hopes and dreams and supporting each other through life challenges. Williams cherished every moment with Jane, and their bond became unbreakable. As days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, Jane and Williams' relationship blossomed. They built a life together, filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. Yet, deep inside Jane's heart held a space for Mark, a space that time and distance could not erase. One afternoon, as Jane was busy at her workplace, she received the news that Mark was returning to Umuzi. Her heart leaped with joy and anxiety. She had waited so long for this moment, but now her life was more complicated than ever. She was very happy and restless at the same time, thinking that when Mark comes, what will she do with Williams? Now, at this time, Williams had decided it was time he settled down, and he had decided to marry Jane. So Williams planned a grand surprise proposal. He wanted to create a memorial moment that would sweep Jane off her feet. He organized a lavish event, inviting their friends and family to witness the proposal occasion. On the day of the proposal, Williams invited Jane to a beautiful garden filled with colorful flowers and lights. As the evening unfolded, Williams took Jane's hand and led her to the venue. He got down on one knee and looked up at her with love and hope in his eyes. "Jane, you are the most amazing person I have ever met. You have brought so much joy into my life. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Jane's eyes as she struggled to find the words. She felt a rush of conflicting emotions. "I'm so sorry, Williams," Jane whispered, her voice trembling. "But no, I cannot accept your proposal. I'm sorry I can't marry you." Williams was devastated. He had poured his heart into the proposal, only to be rejected. He stood up, trying to hide his heartbreak. Then he said, "It's fine, Jane. I understand. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." Now, apparently, Jane had received a message earlier that Mark has arrived at the village, and that's why she rejected Williams. The next morning, Jane waited anxiously for Mark's arrival. She stood by her window, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. Finally, she heard the sound of cars outside her house. She rushed outside, eager to see Mark. To her shock, Mark stepped out of an expensive car with a beautiful woman and 2 children. Jane's heart sank. She could hardly believe her eyes. Mark walked towards her, his face filled with regret. "Jane, I'm so sorry," Mark began, his voice heavy with guilt. "Things did not go as planned. I had no choice but to marry someone else. Please forgive me." Jane felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over her. She had waited for him, kept her promise, and now he had returned with a new family. "You promised me, Mark. You told me to wait for you, and I did. How could you do this to me?" Mark tried to explain, but Jane couldn't bear to listen. She stormed into her house, her mind racing with emotions. In a fit of rage, she grabbed a knife and ran back outside. Without thinking, she stabbed Mark, who collapsed to the ground. Mark's wife screamed, and neighbors rushed to the scene. Mark was quickly taken to the hospital, and the police arrived to arrest Jane. She was taken to the police station, her heart filled with regret and sorrow. Now, news of the incident spread quickly through Umuzi. When Williams heard about Jane's arrest, he was deeply troubled. Despite his own heartbreak, he still cared deeply for her and couldn't bear to see her suffer. Using his influence and connections, Williams worked tirelessly to secure Jane's release. He spoke to the authorities and pleaded with them, explained the emotional turmoil Jane had been through. Eventually, he managed to get her out on bail. When Jane was released, she felt a mix of relief and shame. She had lost control and made a terrible mistake. Williams met her outside the police station, offering his support once again. "Thank you, Williams," Jane said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't deserve your kindness. I have made so many mistakes." Williams gently wiped her tears away. "We all make mistakes, Jane. What's important is that we learn from them and move forward. I still care about you, and I want to help you." Now, Mark survived the attack and eventually forgave Jane. He understood the pain and confusion that had led her to act out in anger. So Jane and Williams remained close friends, but Williams needed time to heal his own heart. He decided to focus on his work and personal growth. In the end, Jane found peace within herself and continued to live a life of purpose and meaning. She honored the memories of her past and looked forward to a brighter future, carrying with her the lessons she had learned along the way.